Thank you. I see that we have quorum, and it's been moved by Councillor Kersey, be it resolved that the special council meeting of November 30th, 2015 do now reconvene to complete the agenda. And that has been moved by Councillor Kersey, second by Councillor Junkin. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. I'm not sure we're going to go into closed session right now. As I indicated at the beginning of the meeting, I have had a discussion with the CAO about the concept paper that he provided council in closed session. Some of it deals with property issues, but some of it doesn't. A lot of it doesn't. And so what I propose is that we can go through the portion that does not, and then if there is a portion that we'd like to discuss regarding property, that we can then go into closed session and deal with those property issues. But I think the other items are substantive and of public interest, and then we can, later on in the meeting, direct the CAO perhaps to release the bulk of this that deals with the issues as opposed to the property issues. So that's what I'm proposing, Council, if you are agreeable. So, Mr. CAO, if you could go through your paper, which you've given to us, and save and accept for the property issues. And then we'll hold off those in a parking lot, and if there's some specifics that we can get into, we can get into them. And I'm also cognizant that there's a meeting of the ADAC committee, the accessibility, the Architecture Design Advisory Committee, and I have had conversations with the clerk saying that there might be items here that we want to forward to that committee and authorize staff to discuss at that point. So, Mr. CAO, we'll start with you, and then we'll move into discussion with council.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just by way of the concept paper, you'll notice it's a bit of a different format for reporting to council. So this was the first go at it. It's tied into creative problem solving. So notwithstanding the content, the format feedback would be helpful. You'll know that in the background, what precipitated a lot of this discussion amongst the senior managers was in relation to the inaugural meeting between Ball and Petroff. We came into the meeting thinking that the bulk of the savings as far as the square footage would be derived from reducing the size of the multipurpose space as well as reducing the size of the common areas. Ball in their analysis came in and indicated that in order to get the costing to a $30 million mark, you'd be looking at a total cut of 37,000 square feet, which is again, for illustration, is about the size of one arena. So it's a very significantly large part of the building.
And that would leave 120, is that correct?
Sorry?
120,000 that would leave?
I believe that's correct, yes.
Thank you.
So the challenge became, okay, well, if we're only really scratching the surface with what we thought would bring us into that $30 million construction cap, where are we going to find the additional square footage without cannibalizing our business case? So we were talking, or Ball was talking about, well, you could always take out a rink, you could take out a gym, and we started to think, well, what would that do to our business case? So what ended up happening is we came back after the meeting and we got the senior managers together and we ran a how might we, which I believe the notes are attached. And we've particularly focused on the question of what don't you know that you would like to know? And that really formulated a lot of the questions that we needed to answer. So there was a number of things. One was the amount and the value of the remaining land after the swap was executed with Allen and the community center had been built. What was left? How much was that worth? We didn't know, for example, if there was opportunity or penalties for paying off the existing East Vaughan Hill debt earlier than the forecast now in order to create more borrowing capacity. We didn't know, and we hadn't really talked a lot about what to do with the existing arena property, and I know that's a bit controversial. We didn't know how long it would take the land to be sold, and we didn't know things like if there was going to be changes to the parameters surrounding infrastructure grants, etc. So What we came up with was three basic challenges. So how might we reduce the community center to bring it down to that $30 million cap? How might we determine the revenues that could be achieved through the sale of other land? That was always, as I understood, part of the equation, one that we have not yet really looked at seriously. And importantly, if we couldn't get the 37,000 square feet cut, the alternate is to increase the operating capital. So how could we improve our debt position? So that was another challenge that we came up with. And then how do we align our 20-year capital budget? And you heard tonight there was a lot of discussion about things people want, but there's also the 20-year capital budget that we need to try and align with the debt schedule that we would need to have in the event that we were borrowing for the community center. So there's a number of recommendations or solutions that we came up with. The first one was the one that we had already sort of banked on, and that was reducing the multi-purpose space by up to half. It's currently 6,000 square feet, so bringing it down to 3,000 or even 2,000 square feet. That's a conversation that we're pursuing with Ball and Petroff. Again, the other one that we're already pursuing is the reduction or elimination of common areas that are not essential to the functionality of the building. The third one, which may come as a surprise and probably the biggest recommendation, is to eliminate the fitness center and the indoor walking track component.
Floating walking track.
The floating walking track, and I'll come back to that in a minute. The other one was to determine, map, and appraise the surplus lands in the block. So when we get the footprint nailed down, then we'll be able to calculate the amount of land that will be remnant that can be used for yet to be determined purposes. Again, the other one is to make recommendations to council regarding the opportunities surrounding the existing arena site. That's something that I think should be at least discussed. And then alignment of the 20-year capital plan. That's something that we are doing already. And as Kerry mentioned earlier in the budget meeting, we've been working behind the scenes with the entire SMT group to achieve that. We're also developing a strategy to pay off the East Swan Hill land debt next year in 2016, which would then in 18 or 19 help us increase our borrowing capacity, which is a part of the puzzle. To finalize the capital costs of the community center so that we're in a position to start construction by the third quarter of 16. So what our goal would be is to have shovel in the ground by August, basically, is what that means. And then also in conjunction with that is we need to finalize the design and the costing for all of the complementary services that goes with the community center. So there's significant costs yet to be considered for the RUNERF, all of the landscaping costs, the upgrades on the pedestrian cycle paths. We've got Summerside Street road construction to punch through to downtown here. So there's a lot of other things than just building a community center that we're going to have to be able to budget and to finance. So when we, as part of the concept paper, part of it is to provide a rationale for our thinking. So really just to focus in on the fitness center discussion. The reason why that made some sense was there was a number of things. Primarily, it helped us get to that 37,000 square feet, or it helped us come up with a big chunk of it. So the fitness center footprint is approximately 12,000 square feet. That would decrease the operating expense because the fitness center calls for additional staff. We're talking about fitness trainers, if you will, or people that can help you use the equipment, but there's also cleaning staff, there's also scheduling, all that other stuff. So it's not just purely a capital, it had some benefit on the expense side, or on the operating side rather. The other rationale was that it was the weakest part of what I felt was our business case, largely due to the estimates that we made in the memberships. We don't know for certain what uptake there would be in memberships. We've made our best estimates, but it does remain a little, to me, it's a little uncertain. And the other part of that is that we've now determined not to go with a private sector partner, namely the Y. So it takes away some of that certainty that we had. Is if we'd had that partnership, we don't have it, so we would be completely on our own. The other issue is that there's been a fair amount of anxiety with regards to the private sector and unfair competition. We've heard that from a wide variety of areas, so it would eliminate that argument. And we've also started to hear rumblings we have for a while. They seem to be getting a little louder with regards to the potential of a Good Life Fitness moving into the Target Center at the Welland Mall. And we had a meeting last week with World Gym, who is eyeing the area. They're making some moves into the Niagara region. Both of these are very large fitness opportunities. Their business model is predicated on about a $10 a month membership. So if you compare that to the membership rates in our business case, we would not be competitive, and that was part of the fear. And finally, it would eliminate the part of the operation that we have absolutely zero experience in operating. So we know how to program space, we know how to run camps, we know how to run programming. So that speaks well to, the rinks and the gyms and that sort of thing. But as far as the specifics of operating a fitness center, we don't have any experience with that.
Can you hold off on 4, 5, and 6 because that's land?
Pardon? Land?
It's land.
Oh, I think you said land.
No, it's land.
Sorry, I'll try to spice it up.
No. So 7.
7, yeah, so these are the things that we're doing. Number 7, we are, as I mentioned, aligning our 20-year budget, and we have a strategy now to pay off the existing East Vaughan Hill land. Carrie can speak to that. And we're also working to complete the design so that we can start to facilitate construction in August of 16. And we're also working with the external consultants to finalize the design and costing of all of the complementary areas that I mentioned, such as the wound roof, etc. So how would we measure our success? Well, the two major ones are obviously the final design would be approved and that we would proceed with that August construction. And also that the design would meet the realistic expectations of the community, which is always, is basically the reason why we're doing this. And second of all, is that council has a capital and operating strategy that the community can afford, again, with undue hardship and without sacrificing our current customer service expectations and our customer service standards. So there's a number of milestones that we're hoping to have endorsed. Again, the capital operating budget be presented and approved again in the first quarter of 16, which would include the debt repayment strategy, capital budget alignment, and revised borrowing limit calculations. So we're looking at increasing the amount of borrowing that we can take on without doing financial harm. That would help us get around this 37,000 square foot reduction in the building. Council directs staff to design a cost to PCC with the removal of the fitness centers. So we're looking at some direction around that. We feel that that's the best recommendation to move forward in conjunction with the 2 spaces that I've already mentioned that we are working on. The design and costing would be completed for all the other complementary and secondary servicing by the first quarter of 16, so early in the new year. Surplus land strategies we would present again early in the new year to council for consideration. The final costing and the design would be completed in the second quarter of 16. And then council ultimately would authorize the tendering of the project and construction, which commence in the third quarter of 16. Ideally, our fundraising targets would be realized, and then finally, the final milestone would be the cutting of the ribbon and opening a new Pelham Community Center in the third quarter of 2017, which would again coincide with hopefully the starting of the 17 hockey season.
Thank you very much, Mr. CEO. Questions, comments from council? It looks like I've notionally thought that there's sort of the design piece, which includes fitness, other square footage. Then there's the loan piece. Then there's the construction piece. Then there's then there's the land piece. Are there other pieces that we want to kind of chat about? That's kind of the order. Perhaps we can talk about the design piece, fitness center, other, and the square footage piece. If we can put our comments to that, Councillor Viac.
Yeah, with regard to design, I'm pleased that the multi-purpose area wasn't reduced to nothing. I think that would have been intolerable, because of course there are probably people within the town who have a desire to do things at the community center that aren't done in gymnasiums or in arenas. And but nevertheless, those same people would be required to pay for the capital cost of the construction of it, as well as the operating costs later on. So it's good that we still have something. I can understand the reduction in the size. I think a useful room can be made out of that kind of limitation. So, I'm glad it's not reduced to nothing. It's a pity that some of it had to go, but obviously some of it does. So that's just a comment. I take it through you, Mr. Mayor, to the CAO that this is, I think, as he described it, a first draft, and presumably it will be polished up a little bit. Maybe a future draft might make room for a bullet point about green stuff. Not only because there's a great deal of interest in
You're talking
eco stuff. Yeah. Not only because it's kind of a nice thing to do, but obviously operating costs can be reduced somewhat if you introduce things like solar panels or use geothermal to reduce the amount of heating energy down the way. This is the time to think about that, I suppose. Materials and construction methods that not only reduce the cost but also make it a more palatable venture. And I think of that not only because it gets some stuff done around energy, but because if we're going to go out to the public asking for donations by way of fundraising, then this is an element that can be stressed, and of course granting, I understand that infrastructure grants might be difficult to achieve. I also understand that if they are going to be giving them, the priority will be for green stuff. So it'd be good to have in the plan some component with regard to that in the design. And does this fall under design or not? I don't know. You tell me whether it is or it isn't, but in looking at the footprint, determining the map, et cetera, appraising and surplus lands, that sort of stuff.
land.
Let's land, not deal with it here. Okay,
Yeah.
my comment hasn't to do with the value of the disposition. It's just a notional, conceptual thing, and that is to keep in mind that we may want to expand this thing sometime down in the future. So we want to be a little careful about what kind of space we allow for it, just to be sure. Anyway, those are my comments.
Okay, thank you. So that is more design in terms of flexibility on that. Others to the design, Councillor Durley.
Yes, in design, it's mentioned to take out the floating walking track, and that's, I assume, the one that was proposed to be around the gyms. This facility needs to have some kind of a walking track, so, we need to replace that floating thing with something, because this is hearing very loud and clear that people want an indoor walking, so, whether it be around the top of one of the arenas or what, but that definitely has to be there, so that has to stay in the design.
I think let's hear, can we get a response from staff?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Mr. CEO?
Yeah, we would put it around the arena.
Okay,
That's the plan.
I've seen it in so many arenas and it's successful. There's no
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, we'd always have the argument about, we'd always had the discussion about where to put the running track. If the running track was to be put in conjunction with a fitness center, business case and practical reasons, you had to include the running track as part of the fitness center operation. If there is no fitness center like the Beamsville Arena, it makes perfect sense to allow people to run around the top of the arena. And just put the markings on the concrete floor. So that would be the alternative, and that's what we'd be proposing.
Okay, that's a good idea.
Good point. And I think we heard some feedback from PMHA and figure skating saying they were in favor of it being there. So go ahead.
Yeah, and looking at the, perhaps the savings can be done in the size of dressing. What's the current size of the dressing room that we have given the junior Bs in the arena?
It's deportable.
I can't remember off the top of my head, Mr. Mayor, but we are looking at the changing room configurations. So again, I don't want to get too heavily into the detail of design because that's what we've asked Ball to do on our behalf. Really what we want to do is to say, okay, to even get into the ballpark for the discussion, we need to either get rid of 37,000 square feet, or we need to increase our borrowing capacity past the 30 million cap, or we need a combination of both. And what we're recommending is a combination of both. There are definitely areas that, Ball came in right away, started asking about square footage on change rooms, where to put them. So I don't have the expertise. I don't want to comment on that level of design because we're still working through it.
Okay, we'll wait for Bob to come in. Okay, that's it for now.
Okay, thank you. Others to design? Councillor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, just a general comment on the report. I like this format. It provides council with a lot of information, background information, rationale, alternatives, da-da-da-da-da. So I think we're heading on the right direction there. So kudos to staff for this. I'm glad to hear, I was gonna raise the issue about the dressing rooms and what have you, because if my memory serves me right, and I've had lots of old-timer moments lately, I think the dressing room for the junior B was 2,000 square feet, give or take. And if we reduce our multi-purpose space to 2,000 square feet, there's gonna be hue and cry from the community, pointing out that you got one dressing room for one team that's 2,000 square feet, and you've got the rest of the community using 2,000 square feet. So I think that's a pitfall that we need to be cognizant of. I'd be more pleased if that multi-purpose space was in the 4,000 square foot range. I think that gives us some upward flexibility that may not be used right away, but over time, the demands for those space, and talking to other communities that have developed these types of facilities and have multi-purpose spaces, invariably say they wish they had built it slightly bigger. So I'd be more pleased with a 4,000 square foot space. I don't think it would add inordinately to the cost. I won't comment on the fitness center for the obvious reasons.
Declare a conflict on that, Councillor?
I haven't, but I didn't think
I'm
we were
just
doing a vote, and I wasn't going to speak to it, so
Okay, thank
I
you.
didn't think there was a direct conflict to
Okay.
be declared, Mr. Mayor. The other pieces, around asset management, I've raised a number of times. We need to use our assets strategically. We need to be aware of what our assets are, what the values are, and how we can use them strategically to accomplish the goals that we want. And so we're going to talk about that more
Yep.
specifically, but
Loan
in general.
budgets, financing, that
Yeah.
kind of thing next.
So I'm pleased to hear that we're going to look at the whole design, not just the areas centered around the multipurpose room. We need to probably look at the seating in the arena perhaps, because that carries with it, seating carries with it, extension in public spaces such as staircase widths, demand for a number of washrooms, et cetera, et cetera. So we need to have a real massaging of all of those elements because they impact on the demand for washrooms and areas that the public is traversing. So I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to wait anxiously to see where the design ends up. I do think that it would be courteous to the ADAC committee to provide them with this information and to ask for their inputs on areas that they see. Maybe the basketball guys will say, you know what, we could shrink our demand in the gyms by this much and we'd be still quite functional and quite happy. Reality has to come home. You've given us our hopes and dreams. We can push this number to this extent. Tell us where you think you could shrink it, and maybe we can incorporate that in our conversations with Ball. I think that way they will feel that they're part of the conversation and not being, all of their work has not been just for naught. I really want to be careful that we don't bring that, and I don't think that's the intent of this report, and I don't think that's the intent of
No.
staff here either. So I'll just make that comment, Mr.
Thank
Mayor.
you.
and
No,
I'm gonna-
that's a really good idea, and that kind of goes to the comment earlier that there is that meeting tomorrow, and if that can be sort of given to the committee to say, look, we're looking for ways, if you can, some of the council has certain ideas that have been enunciated thus far. There may be others that somebody say, you know what, we really don't need blah, 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 blah. Or I didn't like the way that was, and can that be reworked? And that might be some feedback that staff can then give to Ball to provide that. So thank you for that. If we can take that as direction and allow the clerk to bring that up and raise that point at the meeting, I think it'd be helpful.
Thank you.
Councillor Junkin on design elements?
Yes. So like my colleagues, I'm very happy with the direction that this report is taking us to a facility that we as a community can afford. However, I don't think it goes far enough. I honestly think that we should be revisiting the number of seats that we have in the one arena. I honestly think that 12 or I think it was 13 to 1,500 seats, and all that it entails, more washrooms, wider entranceways, wider alleyways. I think we've got to sit back and ask ourselves just how often, if ever, are we going to need 1,300 seats in a facility? And that is, I still believe that's one area where we can knock a lot of money off, and the only people we would upset would be, I can think of one. The other way, myself and most of my constituents, I'm still very much against the twin pad concept. I don't think the demographics support it. We're an aging community. Hockey Canada has just released a study that this year in Ontario, hockey registration for the province of Ontario has dropped 6,000 in the province of Ontario alone. I just think we're going to create a huge white elephant. However, if we must have 2 ice pads, I suggest that an outdoor refrigerated facility built beside the new arena would be an inexpensive, viable alternative to the second arena. Other nearby communities have built these arenas to supplement their new single ice pads. Grimsby is one of them that comes to mind. Also, big cities such as Kitchener, Waterloo, and Toronto have literally hundreds of these facilities, and as nice as the weather is forecast to be, Toronto opened their outdoor rinks this past weekend, and they will remain open until March the 1st. The cost of building an outside refrigerated ice pad is approximately $600,000 and $50,000 a year to operate. Surely this makes more economic sense than building a second ice pad costing anywhere between $8 to $10 million that will only be used a fraction of its available time. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. I don't, is that something that's being looked at, Mr. Ottaway, in terms of, is every kind of suggestion on the table, or in terms of the second ice pad being outside and refrigerated?
Yeah, we're looking at the twin pad that clearly was demonstrated as being sustainable with the update from the leisure plan report, the new information, and now with things like the AAA Admirals, if they were to locate, that pushes our AC use up into on the second pad up into the 80% range. So there's little doubt in my mind as far as the sustainability. That's one of the strongest parts of our business case. We are, however, looking at things like seating. There may be too much seating. The one rink is 13 and change. The second one is 250. So, you know, those elements are on the up for discussion, and you know, certainly we'll be looking to our, you know, we'll be looking to Ball to make some comments on that. Just to put it into perspective, when Ball came to the inaugural meeting, they did a couple of things. One, they validated our costing, our scheduled decosting on the arena as designed at about $54 million. They said that that was an accurate cost. They also brought with them costing from 4 of the other rinks that they had built. One was the Meridian Center most recently. The other one was the Gretzky Center in Brampton. They also built the Brantford, sorry. Brantford. They also built the facility in Milton. And these are all relatively recent, so they had come in with the square footage. So when you talk about efficiencies and materials and green infrastructure. They've got a lot of that knowledge, and they're able to say, and part of the reason for the construction manager is to say you may not want to use, Italian marble. You'd be able to use something else that might achieve the same feel, but maybe a lot cheaper. So I'll just leave that where it is. But as far as the arenas go, we're not looking at only building one pad. We are looking at the twin pad, and I think that was a clear direction from council.
Okay, thank you. But the seats are on the table.
That's correct.
Okay, as it were. Don't sit on the table.
They're cleaning the floor.
Counselor Papp, did you
Well, let me
say
preface,
anything about the design?
yes, I want to preface this by saying I don't want to talk about arenas. I don't want to talk about multi-purpose space. I want to talk about a community center that has all those components, that'll be designed in a manner in which it's best multifunctionally used. Sustainable not just now, but in the future. So I think the things that you brought here tonight are very important to us. We have to define those functional spaces, notwithstanding the fact that we cannot build what we originally proposed, right? I wasn't here for your meeting at the time when you talked about the twin pad, but, so a couple of things come into mind. One is, if you can bear with me, is I respect all of the different components. The reality is, we are driven by, and I'll leave it to the treasurer and the CEO, when you're designing a place that's going to cater to multiple ages and multiple groups, then it has to be something that is maximizing every possible area. So, for example, I don't think we, and I say this with all due respect, get out of the fitness business. You're not going to make any money there, as much as we want. The arenas, for that purpose, and I'll use the Meridian Center, is used more than just for hockey. It has concerts, it has many, if that's the type of place that you're building to have that kind of multiple use, I don't have a problem with that, as long as it maximizes our audience to come in and use it. There could be rationalization for 1,300 seats if in fact we're going to go down that route. Mind you, we have competition, performing arts, we have other things going on, and those have to be brought into play. I'd also want us to ensure that, and I'm waiting here, when you say borrow, if it's 30 million and we paid the debt off and we raised the ceiling to borrow, whatever that may be, 10% more, I'm not sure. That has to be factored in because we've got to pay for it. We've got to pay for it somehow, both operating, and that includes the fundraising component. What I'm thinking is, and I'm not being disrespectful, saying when you go out to sell this to a person to naming rights, they're going to ask you, what is this community center doing? And I would think, and I'm someone that has been in that, you give me all these lists of all these positive things, ice facilities, I'm being generic, multiple uses, I'll give you $1 million because I know it's going to last. So I don't want to get into all the details because I don't think that's something that Mr. Ball, who is very well and competent, knows how to do all this. I just want to be sure that when we go back out to the community, we have something that we can draw a picture, pull out all the components and say, this is what exactly it's going to cost. This is how we're going to raise the money for it. This is how, and it's meaningful to the general residents, including, and I'll use the example, John and I were at the seniors groups. They're still asking. I mean, if there's parts and components that can be put to that purpose, I would rather be focusing on that. The final thing is that I know we did talk about this briefly, but I don't know where it fits in. Traditionally, and Carrie, maybe can, if you're going to raise $3 to $5 million, it's 10% of the project, right? Usually it's roughly around there. Are we looking at putting that on top of the project costs?
Kind of into the next phase.
Well, no,
from
I just want,
design,
yeah,
but-
but the
So is
design-wise,
there anything on design first, and then
Well,
I can see
design
the
is-
I can see the interplay, I understand that.
you
but-
understand the interplay, that the design has to be very articulate and defined in such a manner that we feel comfortable with that's what we're building. I'll leave it at that. I don't want to get into all the
Well,
other
we can
stuff.
talk about, I just wanted to split it up, just.
Yeah,
because
no, I don't
others
want to get
wanted
into,
to talk.
but I mean, the fact is, you know, it has to be, it's, to me, I'm now even more confused. Not confused, I want to know, at the end of the day, what is this design going to be consisting of? What's it going to be?
Mr. CAO,
And
do you?
that's a rhetorical question, but technically,
Okay.
if you remove all these different components,
Right.
what in the end, when I look at it, or the general public looking, what are they going to be looking at?
So you're worried that you cut too much out of it, and what are you left with? Is that what you're kind
Not
of
only
saying,
that,
or
I-
I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No, no,
but-
I'm not putting words in mouth. Typically great, and I'll use the example, always overbuild. Allow yourself that opportunity in case you have to expand, not overbuild, but allow that room for resiliency, that in case you need to change things. We learned this from both good and bad situations, that if you so finitely do it, and then time comes along that you gotta change it, you can't. So on the other side of the coin, I want to make sure that all of the components that are going to be in there, you could basically explain to me that in this community center is going to be the following: 2 ice rinks, that it'll go down, and it'll end up at this particular square footage. This is how it's going to work. Is that where we're trying to get to? I don't mean to
What staff,
simplify.
what's the recommendation that they came up with at the meeting essentially is, and the suggestion was, we'll bring it to ADAC. The big thing was, reduce some of the community, the public spaces, the
Yes.
performing arts space, I
Right.
would call it, and turn it into a more multi-purpose space. And then also the fitness and the elevated walking track. Those are the big elements. Darren, is there, what else would you, but the remainder is there so that it would be twin pad, double gymnasium.
That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, all those elements remain. The other thing with the multi-purpose use of the rinks, particularly in the non-ice season, is important, and we talked about that because that impacts the seating configuration. So it's cheaper to reduce the amount of seats and put them all against one wall, but if you're having a concert or some other event, you're only able to utilize half of your rink. So there's all these different considerations that we are looking at. So the bowl-shaped seating makes a lot more sense for non-hockey purposes because you could put a stage at one end and use the entire length of the arena for whatever seating or viewing or whatever.
Right.
So we're still considering all of those things. Just on the multi-purpose space as well, we did go through the St. Catharines Performing Arts Center last week, and they've got something called a black room, which is about 5,000 square feet, and it's a scaled back performing arts space. And it was quite interesting when we went in there because the initial reaction is, well, this shouldn't be too much to build. They had very modest telescopic seating. They had a sprung floor, and that was about it. But when you start peeling back the layers, not only was there extensive infrastructure costs, the curtain costs, the rigging costs, the lighting costs, all the catwalks, all that stuff was millions of dollars to put in. And with the technology that they use for the lighting and the sound and all the other things for the performing arts space, not only was there that expense, the capital expense, they also had to have 2 full-time technicians in there just to work the computer system to turn the lights on and off. So there was a ton of stuff that I don't think we had been, really thinking through. So when we say the multi-purpose space, yeah, we want a performing arts space that is relevant to the community, but not to the extent of what you're seeing in neighboring municipalities, particularly that black box facility. It just is not realistic for our community. So.
100%.
Thank you. I just have a quick question regarding square footage, and then I have to turn to Councilor Ribyak. If we're using your ballpark numbers, it's $330 a square foot. Like, is that in order, or is that not in order? Like, it seems like a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
That's
A lot of money.
I know it's a lot of money, but is that the, the other way to do it is say, get it down to whatever a square foot too.
Well, it's 6 and 1/2 dozen another. We are looking at that materiality cost as well. We haven't made any of those decisions on finishes and flooring material. That all has yet to come. But we are looking at the costing that we have now, which again is Schedule D, so it's very high level, and we need to tune that down. So those decisions are made as we go along the design process. But unless we have some conceptual framework to work in, it's almost impossible to achieve. So all we're saying now is based on the information that we have, we know that what we're, in the framework that we're given, we know it's not possible. So if you want us to continue, we have to do something, and here's what we're proposing to do in order to expand the framework to create a center that what we're hoping to build.
Okay. And on the design, before I go to Councilor Ribia, are you looking for us to give you tacit approval to say, yeah, go entertain this option to get rid of fitness?
Yes.
I think you gotta get, yeah.
Because I don't want to be the one that goes to
No,
the meeting and
you-
says,
no.
take out the fitness center, and then I've got the entire community after me because I made a unilateral decision. So it's my best recommendation in consultation with not only our consultants, but my colleagues, and that's what we all unanimously feel is the best recommendation to council.
Okay, so you are looking for us to say that
Yes,
tonight or
yes.
defer the decision on that or whatever, okay. Councilor Ribbiak, on design.
Yeah, just two quick points. The first one with, just to follow up on the discussion about a performing arts center. I keep hearing about the kind of infrastructural need for a theater designed for people to come in and put on big productions. When I think of a multi-use area, I'm thinking of a place where people in the community can come and do things in, and really, we're not talking about that kind of structure. So I don't know whether it was, I know that telescopic seating and a stage and all the rest of that stuff would be nice, but if you had to pare it down for purposes of cost, really, it's space for people in the community to do things in, as opposed to bring in acts that require a whole bunch of infrastructure to put on. So that's one thing. And the other thing is, let's not forget that we need a building in that location that is properly representative of Pelham. Don't want a warehouse in it, don't want a factory in it, just that the elevations need to be the right stuff, and of course it has to be durable and resilient, and those are the only points I want to make.
Just quickly, on design, so what I'm hearing here is, so that we're very clear and give instructions, and there's a very critical, A, remove the fitness center. B, reduce the size of the common areas, whatever square footage that works out to, right? Adjust, if I can use the word, the facilities for the ice facilities, right? Adjust the seating, I'm just gonna use it generically. There's other things you can do, but I'm just saying, so the ice area, the ice facilities will be adjusted based on what is considered to be the best functional use of those, right? And any other areas that, from a design component? So basically to bring the structure from 164,000, don't let me put words, down to what, 130?
Well,
Or am I just guesstimating?
we're looking at finding the efficiencies that we can.
Right.
In the building as it's been designed, with the removal of the fitness center and the decrease in the multipurpose space and the common area space.
Okay, so those are two critical
Yes.
floor space components, which reduce the footprint too.
So if it turns out the capital costing when the dust settles is 35 million, then we
Right.
come to council with 35 million.
Right.
But we know a cap that we can go to, which I believe is 37 million. We have that borrow capacity without jeopardizing the finances of the municipality. So it's 7 million more than what we had recommended a month ago, based on these things that we've looked at.
So if you look at page 3, under rationale, it's sort of the first three things. Is that correct? And then I would say that council has added two others. One is sort of look at the ice and the seating and that kind of thing in general, without getting into
We already are.
specifics, but I would add that. And then the next one is get some feedback from ADAC. So the comment, for example, does those that are gonna be using the double gymnasium, does it need to be configured that way? Can it be maximized a different way or whatever? So getting that feedback from ADAC. Those would be the 5 things I think that if we can direct staff in those areas. And we'll have to pull it out, pulling the fitness center. So if you're gonna claim a conflict, why don't you claim it now and get out of here, and then we can talk about it further.
Well,
I mean that in
we
the
are
nicest
going to
possible
vote
way.
and
Are we gonna
talk
vote on it?
specifically about.
Well, we need to give direction to staff, and the only way to do that is as a body and to vote on it.
So is there gonna be a motion or just a direction?
It'll be direction, but we're gonna,
So then we need,
I'm cognizant of your
Yes.
conflict, and I'm a bit uncomfortable, so
Yeah.
if you have a conflict, state it, and then we can deal with that issue, and then we can invite you back in, if I can be so blunt.
Yeah, I have a conflict, Mr. Mayor, that I've
Thank
made
you.
the council well aware of with respect to the fitness center. My wife owns a building in which there is a fitness center operational, so I would ask that any direction be divided, setting the fitness center component aside as a separate direction.
Thank you. I'd like to deal with that first, if you don't mind.
I'm out of here.
Thank you, Counselor. So the direction, the council directs staff to do this, to eliminate the fitness center and walking track, reduce the footprint, et cetera. Would somebody make that, Counselor Pap?
I will, I just picking up on Councilor Durley, I thought you said you're gonna still leave the walking, some form of a walking.
Around the arena.
Around the arena, so it's not eliminating the walking track.
It's eliminating the one that we were. gonna build
elevated
on
walking
top of
track.
the
Right, okay.
fitness center.
So I'll make that motion with regard to rationalization, item number 3.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second? Yeah, we do need a seconder. Counselor Durley? Any further discussion regarding that? Yep.
Just to comment, I think the only reason that I felt that the fitness center was a good part of it was because the plan that came forward, the business plan that came forward, said that there would be revenue coming from that.
Right.
But I think we've really wheedled that away to nothing. Anything left that people want to do recreationally that doesn't involve the gymnasium or otherwise might fit very well in the multi-use area. So it might put some emphasis there. But in terms of the kind of recreational the facility that we're talking about here, I think the rationale for it is gone with the passing of the Y, so I'm good with that.
Yeah, and nobody bidding on it, and just to speak, maybe Mr. CEO, if you could speak to that business case for that piece, you know, you're saying that there was, or there is risk with it, it's one of the riskier areas, especially in light of some of the competition that's coming. Is there anything further to add?
I don't have anything specific to add. It's quite correct. I think the issue with the fitness center, again, that business case was predicated on a third-party operator. So yeah, we were showing opportunity, but also opportunity in the sense that you could use a Y membership here in Welland, et cetera, and that there was a demand for a fitness component. But when you take the third-party operator out, you take that membership transference and you start looking at what the market is doing in the private sector. So the World Gym, the Good Life Fitnesses, those are $10 a month memberships, and we're showing $30 to even come close to an operating sustainability level, and it's just not practical anymore. Our business case is we have to sell too many memberships to generate the revenue to keep the thing sustainable, and I'm not convinced we can sell those. I don't think the market's there to sell that many memberships for just fitness.
But if folks want to do yoga, or they want to play badminton in the gymnasium, or there are still facilities in which they can change in and stretch in and that kind of thing?
Absolutely. Fitness center, we're talking about weights and running.
Right,
You know,
extensive training.
yoga and Tai Chi and
So low impact.
pickleball, all that stuff is still absolutely part of the mix with the facilities that we're proposing.
Okay, that helps. Anything further? Going to call the question on the direction. All those in favor? Any opposed? That direction motion carries. We can get our counselor back after I unceremoniously kicked him out. Regarding the other elements, thank you, Counselor. Reducing the multi-purpose space, I'll say eliminating, reducing common areas. We want to make sure that it's still functional in terms of the way it works. Looking at the seating, which you say is already done, and suggesting that we get some feedback from ADAC. Do we want to give that recommendation or that direction? Councilor Rubiak, will you make that?
I will make it, but I hope you have a chance to comment on
Yep.
it before we pass it.
Okay, Councilor Junkin, will you second that direction to do those things, 1 and 2, and then looking at the seating as you suggested, Councilor, and kind of the arena piece, and then getting feedback from ADAC? I've kind of lumped a whole bunch in there, if that's okay. We can divide if you need to. Councilor Rubiak.
Yeah, and The suggestion here is to reduce the multi-use area by half. I like Councillor Pierce's view that the 4,000 feet, if we can maximize that to whatever we can, with space that can be transformed by the users to what they want to do when they want to do it, as opposed to thinking of it as a space that requires a great deal of cost. If that allows us then to maximize the floor space, I think that's the way it should go, rather than thinking of putting lots of bells and whistles and eating up a lot of budget that way. I really think that we need the space more than we need the bells and the whistles. So with that, I would be supportive, but I would want us to keep that in
Okay.
mind as we go through.
What it says here is reducing.
Reducing, yes, reducing, but maximizing it as, keeping as much of it as we possibly can.
Okay. Others?
I concur with Councilor Ribbiak. I think adding those elements that were brought forward at ADAC, for the performing arts, you want to bring that forward, you go out and raise the funds to do it. And we'll provide the space, but you provide all the appurtenances that go with it if you want to do all of that sort of stuff. So I would prefer to see 3,000 to 4,000 as, I don't know whether you want to get that specific or just looking at the reducing and optimizing, but
3 to 4 is fine. I mean, yeah.
I think you said in your document 2 to 3.
I said 2 to 3, 3 to 4 is fine. I mean, I'll take that direction. That doesn't matter. I get the point. I get the premise. So the premise is let's have a multi-purpose space that we can actually use for a wide variety of multi-purposes, as opposed to building a performing arts space, which,
Right.
despite what ADAC says it's multi-purpose, their intention is it's performing arts. And I've been to enough of the meetings to know that's what they're getting at.
Right,
that's
and in
got to be
fact,
made clear to them.
I've toured the space that they suggested, and it's exactly like you indicated in that black room, except it's not black.
Yeah.
It's huge multi-purpose, and it has the lights and the catwalks and cha-ching, cha-ching, it's very
Oh, no, it's
expensive.
very expensive.
That's exactly what was described.
Yes, and we had the document, this is what we want, like they have, and I forget the name of the community that it's in, but
so maybe we
it
add
is in
an element.
Toronto. Counselor.
Maybe we want to add an element in there to make it absolutely abundantly
Sorry,
clear,
the clerk says it's Ada Slade Hall is what it was. Sorry.
whatever. Thank you. But I'm thinking that we should add to this then to make it abundantly clear that this is not Darren or senior staff. This is council that's saying we want it reduced to 3,000 to 4,000 square feet and not to include the appurtenances necessary to make it a performing arts space. If such things are required, then the user groups would be encouraged to raise the funds and the town would facilitate that fundraising.
Okay,
Simple.
so 3 to 4, not performing arts space.
Correct, thank you.
Thank you. And just to that, and the clerk and I had a conversation earlier today about this, and she wondered if she could raise this. So I'm raising it here so she can raise it at ADAC. And that is that we did have that conversation with the District School Board in Niagara. They have access to funding. They seemed, in initial first blush, seemed, in quotes, so that doesn't buy you anything, interested in exploring the possibility of doing something at Yale Crosley, for instance, in future years. So that's something that I think we should perhaps work with them on to see if something can be done there, which makes sense because they can use it, the community can use it, et cetera. So they do have access to that $800 million a year from the province for those kind of things, and only they can get that. So if we can encourage them to do that, we can certainly do that. Okay?
So this is
Just in terms of the common areas, yeah, it doesn't need to be atriums, but we want to make sure, I'm thinking of some of the common areas and some of the facilities you've been in, you don't want to hit people with hockey bags and all that, like it's got to be functional as well, right? So don't, it says the word eliminate here, don't get rid of it all. Make sure that it's very functional and works from a people movement point of view.
Absolutely.
So as long as that's there,
Yeah, no, I meant by decrease slash eliminate. The slash eliminate was if we reconfigure the arenas, we may not need that long hallway. We reconfigure the change rooms, we may not need a long hallway. That's all common space. So we may be able to get rid of some of that stuff,
Okay.
but that's what I meant by that.
That's helpful. But we still need an area for the
We still need
community
common
to
space.
come together because it is a community center.
Yes.
So interact and come together and all that kind of stuff, so,
What you're gonna be selling.
okay?
It's a single building, Mr. Mayor. It's not a condo with separate external
Right,
entrances.
right.
It's one building.
One building.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so are you ready for that with that caveat that it's keeping as much as we can in terms of the multipurpose space? Council saying 3,000 to 4,000, but not performing arts space. Going to call the question. All those in favor?
If I may,
I don't know that you may.
well,
30 seconds, quickly.
30 seconds. I don't think it's so much not performing arts. It's that it's more raw space
Raw space?
available for anything. I don't know that you want to be that
Not
specific about.
catwalks and lights and that kind of thing.
Exactly. It's just raw space that can be developed in future, however it needs to go, as opposed to being so directive as to say that it's not performing arts space. I'm just uncomfortable with that.
Well, I think what I said
Counselor?
was not, that we would not be providing the appurtenances necessary to make it a performing arts space.
There we go. Look at that. She's even got appurtenance spelled correctly. I don't even know what it means.
Fiddly bits, all the fiddly bits.
I'm going to call the question. Thank you for the clarity. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, I cut Councillor Papp off. He was talking about fundraising, so I'm going to lump
No, you didn't cut me off, I just.
loan budgets and fundraising together. Is there anything?
Yeah, put a plan
there.
together, put all those components together, disposal of property, debt levels. I would just, for the sake of expediency, I'm pretty sure our staff and the treasurer could give us a financing plan that would suit and fit what we're attempting to build here. I'm oversimplifying it, but basically, then it becomes clear to us that, you know, based on what we're designing, it's gonna cost us this much, we can do this, with the property, we can do that. Maybe you want more, the detail will come. It's pretty clear what'll happen.
Thank you. Anyone else?
And by the way, Mr. Mayor, that's something too that I think our beloved clerk, as you talk to the ADAC, that has to, we're under constraint, okay? We're not trying to pull anybody's, the wool over. We're caught, not caught, but I don't want to be negative about it, but we have to be realistic as well. I mean, for the purposes of how we're going to keep this, because the last thing we want is 10 years down the road, and don't take this wrong, the failures of municipalities in the past have been to build things they could not afford. It hasn't happened too often, in fact, rarely, but it was part of it, you know, we had a big dream, and we went out and borrowed all the money, and then we found out we couldn't pay for it. And I think that the people around the ADAC are pretty intelligent and understand that. I think they'll realize that. If we had somebody that gave us $50 million, that's a different story. Right? That's,
Right. Counselor?
Maybe next week.
Me?
with
Huh?
automatics.
Yeah.
I like this, number 11.
Yeah, I do too.
Which basically, in fact, I was drafting
Yeah.
a motion to bring to council on December the 7th, which would have said any fundraising would be over and above whatever budget
and I would
we
second
had
that.
set. Because that gives a motivation for the community to go out and to donate. If it's fully funded, then they go, wow, what are we
Everybody give
giving
me
the
money.
money for?
We're
So,
finding that in another item as well, so.
yeah, so I think that's good. I like it, and, yeah, I think that's gonna make this dream doable. So I would support that.
So, what are you supporting? That it would
Number
be,
11.
well, there's a bit in there that's different than what you, slightly different than what you said. So number 11 says essentially that donations would be on top of
Yeah.
the cap, but are you raising the cap or not? Or we don't know yet?
We don't know yet.
We don't know.
That's-
I'm-
That's up,
So it appears that the cap is really 37 million.
right?
If the community raises 5 million, so be it. We're gonna pump it into the community center.
Or set it aside for future.
Yeah, I think,
Does that bring it to 42 million, or is that still 37?
what does 11 say, Mr. CEO?
I'm looking at a different draft. 11 is,
So I'm confused between the numbers. Debt tolerance of 37 plus 3?
Yeah,
Is
that's-
40, but
yeah.
right now, council has said 30. So what you're saying is 30 plus
Well, we would go to 37, and then it would be plus the 3 for fundraising. I think Carrie can speak to it.
Yeah, I'm saying I'm supporting number
Yeah,
11.
The debt tolerance level for the town is 37 million, so that's the cap that we would have it designed to. But that as you're going through with, you know, and having talking to with Martin from our fundraising vendor, that you know a lot about that funding at the onset, so changes in the facility could be accommodated to add appurtenances and
That's right.
stuff like that.
That's what they
So
do.
that
That's
you're
exactly what
increasing
they
the construction cost, but we certainly would only design it to the 37 million at this time.
That's right, that's how you do it.
Exactly right.
And what was the other thing we were talking about? Great.
Okay, so now, I guess maybe I'm dense here. You're suggesting that we raise it to 37. I'd like to see, personally, I'd like to see the numbers before we raise the number, because everything right now, we've seen 30, 30, 30, 30. So, Councillor Papp, you're.
I agree with you. I just, and I think, Council Curtis, these are the parameters. These are general parameters of what's been suggested by the CEO. So you're right, we need to find out, based on what we just decided on design, you come back with a report, say, this is what it's gonna cost us, this is how we can finance it, right? I'm oversimple, but that's basically what it'll come back to.
That's, Mr. Mayor, that's exactly what the reason
Yeah.
for this paper was, is to say, we can't do what you're asking with the parameters you've
Right.
given us. We need different parameters. So
Correct.
the parameters are $37 million expectation on borrowing.
Yes.
With reductions in the following areas that you've discussed. Let us go off, do our work, and then we'll come back with the detailed plan on how we
Game plan
propose
on
to
how
do
to-
that.
Right.
Because I can't go into a construction meeting and say, cut out the fitness center if I don't have some sort of a mandate to do that, because then I come back with no fitness
No,
center.
no, that's fine. I'm just worried about the dollars.
Well, the dollars, you trust us.
I'd like to see more information on that.
But I think with the dollars, it's that
I'm gonna-
we can demonstrate that we can, you know, with the other things combined, we can do a $37 million build. But let us go design that. It may only end up to be 35 after the
Right.
cuts. We
That's
don't know
right.
that yet.
That's
We're
what
just
you don't know
saying
that
to a
yet.
maximum of 37.
Happening.
Then we come back with the details on how to achieve that.
Perfect.
But I'll say too, that a significant part of this, and I know we're not talking about land, I don't think it's anything secret, is that the town will have surplus land, and we need to figure out what to do with it. And I think that's a big part of this, because we're talking about a significant amount of potential revenue that can be applied either here or to other areas to
Right.
offset that borrowing.
Right. Councillor Kersey.
No,
No,
that's
we're-
exactly it. I think we're capping, we're saying the town's commitment is going to be moved from 30 to 37 million, based on the information from Ball Construction, that it can't be built with any reasonableness for 30. So we need to raise the cap to allow them to move forward with the design, conditional upon all the things that we've talked about with respect to design, and that we're going to add on top of that any fundraising.
Okay,
So
so
if it-
you're giving the direction for that.
I am.
Okay, is there a seconder for that?
The treasurer wanted to comment there too,
Yeah,
Mr.
why don't you,
Councillor Ribbiak will second that, Madam Treasurer.
No, I just wanted to discuss, there was some questions around the debt and the ability to make room for another 7 million. So just as an explanation to council, one of the biggest issues is removing the East Fonthill land debt obligation that's on the debenture schedule. That opens up, over, a few $1 million worth of debt room just in that magnitude, because that debt principal was $260,000 a year. So that, and then there's that interest component.
So it's 300.
Yeah, that variable interest amount. And then, one of the things that council is going to be made aware of, or knows that we have sat as SMT and aligned, this debt repayment schedule with all of the capital budget requests. And that means making some critical choices on what projects are coming forward right now and which ones are waiting until after our debt threshold issue ends basically in 2020, where we start recovering and getting back on a plan to recover that debt repayment limit. And then that allows those projects to go. But DC revenues, the land swap revenues, all of these things play a component into whether this schedule, it works now. It's the most conservative schedule, so anything after this is just going to help offset that debt and reduce the amount that we actually have to either take out or use for other projects. Because right now we are also debenturing DC, and that impacts on the debt repayment schedule. We're hoping to not have to do that. once the growth starts out in the East Frontal lands, and then eliminate some of these debt instruments that we've indicated in the schedule as well. I just wanted to give like a summary of where we started and where we're at now with finding that extra $7 million room.
Okay. Thank you. I'd like to, personally, I'd like to see more detail on that before kind of approving it. So that's my thoughts. So.
I think I would project that it would come at the capital budget meeting, because that's where you're gonna see all of the capital budgets, and at that same time, I can provide the debt repayment schedule to council for their review.
We're not spending anything, we're only designing.
Yeah, that's it.
So
You're designing the spending.
you're not
plan.
saying we're spending 37, you're just saying design within that framework, that's all you're saying.
That framework, right. Yeah, that's it.
Counselor?
Recognizing the need for detail and finality at some point, I think conceptually this is something that I can certainly support.
Okay, thank you. Any others? Okay, we're ready for calling of the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? I'm going to abstain from the vote on that because I don't feel that we have the information that's needed, so I just wanted to,
So let me just ask you, there's nobody, what kind of detail are you looking for?
well, the treasurer
To help
has-
us,
Yeah,
what
the
do you
treasurer,
want?
and I'm not trusting staff, I just would like to see it. We've been shown schedules with 30 million, 30 million, 30 million, so I'd like to see a little bit more detail. I know the treasurer has enunciated it. Maybe it's my fine-tooth comb,
Do that
forgive
too.
me. But I'd like to just see that before we change it, that's all.
We'll do that too, Mr. Mayor.
And I know you will, and I'm not, that's why I'm not saying yes or no, I'm saying, I'm just gonna, just for now, cool my jets, because and
Abstain or negative.
so I'm just gonna abstain, it is a negative, but that's fine, it still gets approved, it still moves
Yep,
forward.
yeah, no,
But
that's-
I
no,
personally would
that's-
like to see, and I hope council will wanna see this as well, additional information. So I'm not trying to offend council or staff, I'm just saying I personally would want more information, that's all.
Mr. Mayor, we don't have any, I mean, you gotta have the sound business case, you're right. All of a sudden, you've gone from a line of credit of 30 million, you're saying there's 37 million. Prove it to us, show it to us, make us feel comfortable, right? That's what you're getting at, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not disagreeing with that. I don't think any of us are disagreeing. But it also sets the framework when you go to talk to the construction guys, you're gonna say to them, and the ADAC, and say, this is where we're at right now.
Exactly.
And I think the piece, and we directed staff, if I can speak to just a little bit more.
Sure.
The piece that we directed staff to, come back with a recommendation for us to consider on the 7th to the provincial and federal government about including this type of funding in all this infrastructure money that's supposed to be there. That's the piece. I mean, hope springs eternal. I'm hoping that there's infrastructure money there, that we can apply for that and receive it and get some of it to help pay
fine,
for
we agree.
these costs, so.
Yeah,
But
then we can go to 54 million. I'm pulling your leg for God's
We won't hold it
sorry,
against you, Mr. Mayor.
thank you very much. I just wanted more
We know you're
information.
thinking with fine-tooth comb, and
I
we're
apologize.
on it. We're
Thank
on
you,
it.
Counselor, you're very kind, thank you.
I warn you, I used to use a fine-tooth comb.
Okay, next.
Thank you. And we'll look forward to more information on that loan, repaying it in 16. Anything on construction? I'm going to just ask in terms of the milestones. It appears to me that there's a milestone that's missing, overlooked, whatever, and that just says council authorized tendering the project. So that's the first. So, I mean, you're going to design it, then council will authorize the tendering, and then that'll come back. So it's in this number 6 here on page 4, but it just seems that there's two, we'll say, yes, go construct it. Maybe the tenders come back and it's going to be 54 million, or maybe it come back and be like, whatever that is.
Well, that's the purpose of the costing. We'll be fairly accurate. I mean, again, it's
Yeah, you'll
Schedule
come back and
D,
tell us what
Schedule C, B, and A, and when we get to tendering, we'll have a pretty good handle on what the costs are, not down to the nickel, but maybe down to the quarter,
Absolutely.
so.
The city of St. Catharines came, it was an interesting exercise. They went out, they had their budget, they had the costing. I'm sure we're doing it totally differently because we have a construction manager. But they came back and the cost was higher than they thought, than their top.
It's true.
And they had to go and say, figure out how to cut some stuff. And then their fundraising was higher, and then they actually added more things in. So I was just thinking that there's 2 milestones here, that's all.
Yeah, just for council's information, when we went through our tour, what was interesting is that that St. Catharines have been taxing to build up the required dollars for the operating expense, which they were calculating at about $1 million a year. Council canceled that program at a threshold of $750,000, so now they're scrambling to try and find that other $250,000 to keep the thing open, and it's not even fully operational yet, so they're already in trouble. And that's so, again, it's one of those things where you gotta have the business case to be able to demonstrate, you know, that you can make this thing sustainable, and that's my paranoia.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Junkin?
I'm just, somewhere, I guess it would be between 5 and 6, or perhaps 4 and 5. We have omitted about having to take this to the community as such and have open houses. I was just wondering how that's going to fit in.
Yeah, very good. That is the intention, and I think ADAC is, it's part of their mandate as well to be involved in that discussion, and certainly encourage the ADAC committee tomorrow to talk about that a little bit. Mr. CEO, to the councilor's point.
Yeah, that's not
a good point.
specifically included in here because that premise hasn't changed of going to the community as soon as we've got decent elevations. So as soon as we get elevations, we'll go to the public with it, but we won't have elevations until we nail down this other stuff first.
Yeah, I would ask on behalf of council, and specifically Councilor Junkin, that when this, I hope we can provide staff direction to release the bulk of this memo, that when it is released, that be added in terms of a milestone, feedback from the community. It feeds into not only the construction and the design, but also into the fundraising. So if you can add that in.
That'll be critical. I want to know.
Thank you, Counselor. Others to, what are we on here? We're on construction milestones? That design? Okay, and now, do we need to go into closed session to discuss any of the land portions?
I don't think so. That'll come back to us.
You do?
It seems to me that there's some stuff that we need to talk about that's related to that, and
Okay.
unless I'm missing something.
Okay.
You want to extend, clerk is suggesting we may want to extend the curfew.
Oh, it's curfew time, sorry.
Just for another 10 minutes, how's that sound? 15 minutes?
I'm the only one, they were holding things up for it. I'm sure it'll take less than that.
Okay, well, let's hear it. I
Okay,
mean, we
Councilor
want to-
Ribbiak,
Yeah.
will you move to extend
I
curfew?
will, yes.
Councilor Durley's second, and that's like for, what are we going to do here?
10 minutes, let's find out.
10 minutes?
Or less.
Councilor Ribbiak is asking that we go in camera. He has some questions, and
Okay.
I think we should honor that. Okay?
Dealing specifically with property.
Yes.
Okay, then we got to go. That's right.
Okay, going to call the question on first extending curfew. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Now, it has been moved by Councilor Durley, second by Councilor Kersey, that the next portion may be closed to the public in order to consider the following section under 239-2C, proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality local board. It's really all the lands. So all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. We'll now go into closed session.